So, as with many of my live Instagram videos, I didn't actually initially intend to make this video. I was writing a blog post for my personal blog, and got to a point where I was talking about basically the premise of my blog post, and realized that there's something that I haven't really shared with other people very often, or really at all, I feel like. And that is what it has really taken me to get here. And I mean that in the emotional sense, the physical sense, and the recovery sense. So, I wanted to talk about it today because I need to get it out. And I'll probably talk about this with my husband later, and I'll probably talk about this with friends later still, but this is just me right now with a stream of consciousness. And the truth of the matter is that, yes, I survived 17 years of childhood abuse. Yes, I, survived working at Amazon. Yes, I survived all of this other shit. But there's truly one day that I can look back on and without a doubt say was the hardest day for me to survive. And I just want to let everybody know, if they're watching this, that here's a content warning about suicide and suicidal ideation and stuff like that. So if you're not able to watch that, don't keep watching. But and I should probably put that in a comment real quickly. Okay. Sorry, I used swipe, so that's why the screen is jumping around. But anyways, here we go. In September 2017, I was fired from my job, my last full-time job that I was able to hold, and that was September 6th. I think I already said that, sorry. But that was actually the worst day. I could say the worst day of my life. It was my rock bottom day. I had gone to work. I had just started riding the bus to work like a day or two before that to save money on gas, and I'm really thankful I did, because later in the story I needed Calvin to come pick me up. And I don't think I could have driven home, and I don't know how he would have, he probably would have ridden the bus for me, but I don't know. Anyways, I'm glad he didn't have to do that, because then I would have had too much of an opportunity to harm myself, to be quite honest. And so, I knew as soon as my boss walked in that I was going to be fired. She didn't say anything to me right away. She walked in, like, the door to the office was, like, down a little, like, probably about 20 or 25 feet away from me. But I just felt it. Like, I saw her walk in, and right behind her was our director, her manager. And I don't know. Like, when I think back through the events now, I think they maybe, like, made very super brief eye contact with me because they were going to be coming over to me, but it wasn't long enough for really any reasonable, like, non-intuitive reason for me to guess that they were going to fire me. It's just the way that it just felt like they were, and then as they like walked, they were only there for like 2 or 3 minutes before they told me to go to the conference room with them, but those 2 or 3 minutes felt like a long time. And I don't know, I just felt like they were avoiding looking at me the whole time. Me specifically, because they seemed to be saying hello to everybody else, but like they wouldn't look over in my area of the office, and I know that they had good reason to, because there's a couple people who were next to me that were like favorites. So the fact that they were avoiding our area, and also given my time with them in the last few months of my job there, I just had a really heavy intuition that that was going to happen that day. And so they pulled me into the conference room. HR was on video call. A representative from HR was on video call. Gave me the news. I had my husband come to help me fill out the paperwork because I didn't want to do it by myself with everything that was happening. I don't think I was really in a place psychologically to be making a legally binding decision like that. So again, that's why I had my husband come. So anyways, while I was in the conference room, I have to admit that the way I felt physically did not reflect what I felt really mentally, but my body also would not initiate any physical manifestations of how I felt mentally. And I was definitely trying to, it sounds so hard, it's like so weird and it's so disgusting to me to say it out loud, but I was kind of like overplaying what I was actually in the moment physically feeling. Not that my emotional health and my psychological status, like, it reflected my emotional and psychological status, but my body just was in shock. I couldn't react. It was like my mind knew something that my body didn't. And my body just wouldn't communicate it. So I was kind of like mentally forcing my body to act, to show them what this was, because they knew I had mental health disorders. They knew I had panic attack issues, but they'd never seen it happen, really. And I told them I was having one, but it didn't really, like, my body wasn't really, like, I don't know. It was weird. And it's not that I was faking it. I wasn't faking any of it. It's just that my body and mind were out of sync. And I know this because of what happened after I left the conference room, which in no way was something I had to over-accentuate. So, after all the paperwork was signed, they brought my stuff, some of my stuff to me, blah, blah, blah. We went outside, and of course I, was crying, but as soon as I got in the car, something shattered. Like a dam, whatever was holding back that physical reaction inside burst open. Like, whatever that wall was, defense mechanism, it just shattered. It was not there anymore. It couldn't, it was like, as soon as those people were, these people that I think it was because, so again, this is all a stream of consciousness, I think it was because they broke my trust in that moment. And so my body dissociated and reacted the way it normally does to harm, and it just shut down and was like, no, I'm not giving them any of this reaction, which was how I reacted a lot when my stepdad would abuse me. I was very stoic seeming, but realistically it wasn't a stoic response. It was more of a fear response and my body defending itself. So I got to the car, and every nerve ending in my body was on fire. Hello. Just talking about a really bad day that kind of fueled my recovery process. I said earlier that it was like one of the worst days of my life, if not the worst day of my life. And I'm just getting to the part where I'm talking about the actual, like, physical reaction I had. So, I got to the car, and I don't know. Oh yeah, so I was trying to remember where I was at. I was like, nerve endings on fire. My brain was loud, for lack of a better term, crowded, and just, kind of I was just losing my shit mentally and physically. But it was so painful, emotionally, mentally, and physically. I literally was writhing in my seat in pain. I couldn't get comfortable. I was like sobbing, but sobbing almost doesn't feel like strong enough of a description for what it was. And I was begging Calvin. I was just saying, please, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't want to feel this pain anymore. I don't think I can continue to live like this. Or rather, I can't continue to live like this. I can't continue to feel this pain. And I just wanted to die. And I was just saying, please, please help me. Of course, he didn't have any way to help me other than just sit there and witness this excruciating and must have been like horrific sight for him, because I had never shown him, I had never had a meltdown that he got to fully see. I would always hide. I would lock him out of the bedroom, or I would go into the bathroom, or I would take a drive somewhere and just let myself break down away from him, because that's what I was taught to do when I was being abused. Like, my mom's late husband, one of my most prolific abusers, was, he would taunt me and, like, make fun of me for having emotions and being upset, because he would just say that I was too sensitive and I was, a crybaby essentially. And so I learned to hide it, and nobody had, I didn't even realize this until today, but I don't think he had ever seen me break down that far, because I definitely felt something similar, like my borderline personality disorder meltdowns felt as, like, heavy, but never so painful. That was definitely the most painful one. And I just wanted to die. My brain kept thinking of places I could go. But, so this is something else that happens to me when I have a meltdown. Or used to. I haven't had one in a while. But I would split, cognitively split. So, the way I've always described it to people is like a devil-angel type of situation. But it's not really that clear-cut. It's like logic and whatever the extreme emotion is, typically anger at that point. But this one was not anger. It was far beyond hurt. It was broken, I guess. So, like, the logical side of me and the broken side of me. My eye is twitching. Sorry. It happens. Ugh. And so while all of this chaos was running, both of my eyes, like this down here a little bit and this up here on my eyelash, or my eyelid. So, while part of me was in this, like, chaotic, painful, like, agonizing emotional and physical pain, the logical side of me, which never wins when it gets to this point, by the way, I just hear myself. It's my own voice, basically. But if I'm being honest, it doesn't really look like me when I look inside and, like, think about it. Actually, I think it looks like my mom. Oh, shit. And, I didn't know that before. So, basically the voice, which is, again, it's like, it's always sounded like my voice, but the image of this, like, if I had to put an image to it, it doesn't look like me. Like I said, it looks more like my mom. But it's also, you could think of it like the Jiminy Cricket type of thing, but the logical side saying, like, it's okay, this needs to happen, like, this wasn't the right place for you anymore, you needed this to end, but it wasn't going to end any other way. And it wasn't necessary. The ending part was all about leaving Rover, my last full-time job, because I was so unhappy there for, like, the last 2 months, which is why my quality of work declined, why I was having a hard time getting anything done, why I was basically splitting all the time, having very black and white thinking, and I shouldn't have been there as long as I was, but I didn't have the financial luxury of just quitting and going somewhere else. Because if you quit, you don't always get to get unemployment, even if it was, like, just not a good fit anymore. It's so hard, and it, like, extends we just didn't have the money to do it, basically. And luckily, because they fired me, I got a severance package, which helped us for the first few months. So anyways, I just had this, like, logical voice telling me, like, this needed to happen. And I also felt like that voice was telling me, like, this is you. This is, like, this pain also needed to happen. I also needed to feel that pain because, you know, life is suffering, right? As the Buddhists say. But that pain was really teaching me something that, you know, yes, I felt betrayed. I felt like they had abandoned me because they had told me that they would be supportive of me no matter what, and that I was family. A few days before they fired me, one of the C-suite executives had given our we had like a bi-weekly staff meeting, all-hands staff meeting, and they would record it, and during this particular one, I think it was the COO, had given a talk about how our CEO had cancer, and the COO had just stepped in and started taking care of shit, and, you know, just picking up the slack because that's what family and good coworkers do, and blah blah blah. And so when I saw that video, I actually thought, because I knew that there was a lot of shit happening, I knew that I was really falling behind, that I was really struggling, I knew that I was having a hard time, and I had been, you know, it's not like they wrote me up, they had a few, like, correctional meetings with me, so it's not like I didn't expect something to happen, but I had told my manager at the very beginning of August, like the first day of August basically, quote, I don't really feel healthy enough to be working most days, is what I said to her. Now, they had short-term disability there, they had long-term disability insurance. I didn't qualify for FMLA, but they could have helped me go on to either of those. They could have helped me get accommodations, which I had talked to them about, but at this point they just didn't. I don't think they wanted me there anymore. It didn't matter where I was at. I feel like they had made this decision at least a month before they finally let me go. And then I made a bunch of really small but consecutive mistakes right before they let me go because of all this shit. And it didn't help that all of those mistakes happened on the anniversary of me quitting Amazon. Literally the 1-year anniversary of me quitting Amazon. So I was in a place where I'm pretty sure I was dissociated. I'm pretty sure that I was like getting ready to have a breakdown because when I came back, I did get sick with diarrhea and vomiting out of fucking nowhere. Nobody else got it. Calvin didn't get it. It was just, and it wasn't food poisoning because I've had food poisoning and that was not what it was. It was the craziest shit. I'm pretty sure it was just my body being sick. And so I don't know where I was. I don't remember where I was at now. Oh yeah, so I knew this needed to happen. And it was, even in that moment, I felt like I was giving birth. Like in my brain, somewhere in that situation, like that thought came to mind, like this must be what giving birth feels like because it's a truly immense and debilitating pain. And yet, it was like a paralyzing pain almost. And yet, I knew it had to happen for me to get to where I needed to go, to get to that goal. So, similar to childbirth, you have to push a fucking baby out of you or have it taken out of your belly to have a baby. Like, that's just how babies are born. They don't just like, poop, I'm out now. Poof. Some people get lucky like that. Some people, like, baby just slides right out in like 2-3 minutes after labor starts. And they're like, oh, I had another baby, cool. Just because their body knows what to do. But my body didn't know how to react to this. And I don't think I would have reacted that way had I not already started therapy with my current and then very brand new therapist. Sorry, my eye's twitching again. I don't think I would have had that outlook. I don't think I would have had that revelation. I think it would have been a lot harder, if not impossible. And oh yeah, because I was talking about the COO. So when they fired me, I was like, I think that was partially why I was in shock, because I guess I thought there was going to be some sort of saving grace. I thought, because they told me that they understood that physical and mental ailments can be just as debilitating as the other, and I thought me telling her I felt sick, and I thought me asking for help would get her to help me, instead of them punishing me for this mental illness that was so obvious. Like, I was performing really well for the first 4 or 5, 3 or 4 months, 4 months probably, 4 or 5 months. And then all of a sudden, things just tank. Yeah, I had some, interpersonal issues, but, things really tanked all at once. All of my actual work issues, nothing to do with my absences, all to do with, my actual performance was in the last month. And like, I've talked to other people about this, other people who are managers, and they're like, I don't understand how a manager could see somebody perform so well for such an extended period of time, knowing that they have a mental illness. Because I disclosed, like, the first week I disclosed while I was in onboarding training to the HR, and I disclosed it to my direct manager as well. So she knew this stuff, HR knew this stuff, and all of a sudden my performance tanked. Didn't help the fact that they had just told me I was no longer allowed to bring Juno in because of an incident that was still in my, like, I'm not even trying to justify it. Like, rationally, it was a minor incident that did not require the level of action that they took, which was to completely remove her, despite the fact that there were other dogs in that office that were actually a lot worse, in my opinion. Hi, Mela. So, this is like a video that you're gonna probably want to watch from the very beginning, because it's not gonna make a lot of sense right now. But be warned that it's pretty fucking intense compared to some of the other shit. But so I really thought that they were gonna try to help me, and so that when they actually fired me, okay, good night, sleep well. So when they fired me, I think that was why I was in shock, was like, and then all my abandonment issues, of course, okay, were like full alert, basically, because of all of this other stuff that had happened with work and what they had said, and it just, they did. There is no question. It didn't just feel like they abandoned me. They full on abandoned me because of my mental illness. And I know that it was my mental illness because they had not documented a single one of my physical illness days. They had literally just done a presentation on helping somebody with cancer without any questions asked, the work of a CEO who had far more responsibilities and, like, for that company than I did, handled a lot more shit than I handled, and yet didn't help me. Chose not to help me. Actively chose not to help me, despite my telling them what was wrong, despite me being honest and vulnerable. They chose to let me go. And for a long time, I've tried to really, like, hedge around that conversation and really, like, try not to put blame on them. But they did abandon me. There is no if, and, or but, and it's really relieving to finally just call the fucking spade a spade, because they really betrayed my trust. And I can talk about it without crying now, but it tore me up. And actually, thank God they did. Again, I knew this needed to happen. I really wish I didn't have to experience the pain of it, but, you know, that's what life is. And I was only diagnosed with borderline because of how I reacted to the situation. There wasn't a lot of other shit going on in my life. I had already cut ties with my mom. I had already kind of slowly started cutting ties with my dad. I didn't really talk to my family that much. Like, there was a lot of, I had isolated myself to protect against this shit. That was the whole reason I had isolated myself. And I am glad that it happened, because fuck you. Not the company as a whole, because I honestly think that if the COO, if they knew the actual details, if they, with everything now that I know, and now that I'm actually able to communicate what happened, I'm not saying that they're fully at fault, because I I was not capable of communicating what I needed, what was wrong with me, and I was too afraid to do so. But I do feel as though I had communicated enough and given them enough detail that they truly could have done more and something different at least than what they did. They could have helped me get on short-term disability, and that would have resolved a lot of my other fucking issues. They could have put me on short-term disability, and I could have probably taken time to recover and come back. Or they could have let me go, because short-term disability doesn't end once it's approved. It doesn't end when you get fired. And so, especially since they had the long-term disability option as well. And so, they are partially to blame. Sorry, they are fully to blame for how they handled it. But they're not fully to blame for the information that they did or did not have access to. But being able to look back, fuck those individual people, and if they ever see this, they know who they are. Again, it wasn't the full company. And also, again, I feel like if other people had been brought in, I know for a fact if other people had been brought in, that it would have gone differently. Like, I doubt that the COO who had just taken cover for this person, like, would have felt that I needed to be let go in that way. Again, yes, let me go, but help me get on short-term disability. Like, there's so much more they could have done to help me than what they did. And they could have easily fired me for not being able to meet the attendance requirements because I didn't meet FMLA requirements yet. Like, I didn't qualify for FMLA yet. So they were within their legal right to say, like, oh, you can't come to work for an extended period of time. We're going to have to let you go. You know what I mean? So, like, there were options for them to remain legally sound and still help me instead of punishing me for being sick. And so I say fuck you to those individuals because, especially my manager, I'm not going to lie, fuck you for, I don't know, honestly. Like, I want to be mad at her because I really felt like she could have done more, but I feel like she probably thinks that she did too much or did as much as she could have done. Maybe fuck you to HR, but maybe it's not even their fault because nobody's telling people how to help people with mental illness. Like, it's only just now getting to a point where more and more people are sharing about their experiences on, like, LinkedIn where people can see it. Like, I was sharing this shit last year and it was like, oh, fuck. So literally this year has changed already. From a year ago, this year now has totally different impact on mental health in the workplace. So maybe they didn't even know, but why would you maybe they don't know that short-term disability can be used for mental illnesses. Maybe it never fucking crossed their mind. So fuck you to the stigma, I guess, around mental illness. Because I really think that these are kind, genuine, decent people who want to do the right thing, but they didn't have the setup. So, but still fuck you for abandoning me. Fuck you for not trying to do something more. Fuck you for only writing down the days I took off because I was sick with mental health issues. Like when I would call in a mental health day. Fuck you for only keeping track of those. When I was sick with an ear infection, I called in one day. I didn't tell him it was cramps, but I told him it was an issue that I'd been having. Now I know officially is diagnosed as endometriosis, which I already had suspicions of, but now have official medical documentation. Anyways, and then, I had the ear infection and the cramps the day I stayed home sick because I was vomiting and shitting at the exact same time, and it went on for 4 hours like that. There were many other days that I called in sick in between those, and they didn't track a single fucking one of them. But they tracked the time I came back from lunch from a panic attack. They tracked the day I left early for a panic attack. They tracked the days I called off for mental health days because of depression is what it was at that point. I didn't tell them what it was specifically. Maybe I should have just, like, but, like, what am I supposed to do? Call in and be like, hey, I'm actively suicidal, I can't come into work today, click. You know, it's like, how am I supposed to communicate that I'm suicidal to a manager when, you know, like, I mean, I guess I should have. I should have just been honest. But I had read in other places that people had told their managers that and then gotten fired for, like, putting that, like, they won lawsuits for putting an employee at harm. And it's like, I'm not, like, I can't even think of the word. It's where you, like, go postal, essentially, but, I'm not, like, I'm not going I'm not gonna hurt people. Just suicidal and depressed and feel like I can't get out of bed. And so, yeah, the day they fired me really needed to happen. The hardest part is that I don't feel like I'll ever get to say these things to them. And that's why I'm happy to be talking, that's why I'm talking about it here, is that I'm, according to my severance package, I'm not allowed to speak ill about them. And sometimes people think that the truth is speaking ill about somebody or defaming somebody. And it's like, this isn't defamation. This is me telling the fucking truth about what happened. And I am taking credit for the fact that I totally bungled my job in that last month. But if they had maybe taken a few extra minutes outside of their busy-ass schedules to consider the fact that somebody with PTSD, which I documented with them, PTSD, like, I didn't even, like, document all of the very specific details, and at that point, I hadn't been diagnosed with BPD yet, but, like, I chose to disclose PTSD and ADHD, but PTSD exclusively because of what is associated with that. Suicidal ideations, all of this other shit. But nobody did research, and that's another thing that really pisses me off. Is it's obvious to me that none of you guys, if you see this video, none of you guys fucking did research on what exactly PTSD involves and how it can impact somebody. And all of the fucking warning signs of somebody being suicidal. And no, that is not their obliged, required job. But when people say that they give a fuck about you when you have a mental illness, so when people say that they give a fuck about me, my expectation is they're going to educate themselves, and unfortunately what I've learned throughout my recovery is that's not what people do. You have to educate them because they're not going to go look for those answers themselves. That's why I talk about borderline personality disorder on here. That's why I talk about my depression. That's why I've been so open and honest about all this shit, is because nobody's going and looking at this shit. And then when people do look up this shit, they only find, you know, it feels like they only find what it's like to survive being on the outside of these things. And it's like, are you looking at the story of what's happening for the person who's actually experiencing it? Because it doesn't feel like you are. And I don't think anybody was. And so they were ignorant, whether it was by choice or by lack of interest. And that pisses me off because, again, it's just the way society is built right now, or at least at that point. And it's hard because, you know, I put everything I could into that job. I did everything I could to research how to be more successful. I talked to them. I was open with them as much as I physically could and emotionally was capable of being, and I was honest with them. And they kept trying to say that it was the job. Like, they kept saying it was the job that was too stressful for me. And it's like, it's not the job. It's fucking life is too stressful for me, especially at that point. Now it's better, but, you know, life is still stressful for me now. Like, in October, I went to a fucking job fair and was great and then crashed. Like, I thought I was having a great time and then I just fucking crashed because I have to be, I have to, like, hide it. I have to disguise that I'm anxious, and I have to pretend, like, fake it till you make it bullshit, and the faking it is exhausting. All I want to do is be able to walk in and be like, I'm super anxious today. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to speak to anybody. Today's not a good day for any feedback you might have for me. Like, I'm emotionally vulnerable, or, whatever the issue might be that day. But that's not, like, that shit gets you fired, even in more modern and, like, accepting environments, as is obvious by my time at Rover. And again, it's not Rover as a company. I wasn't talking to every single person there. It was just a select few people. And again, like I said, maybe if more people had known, it could have helped, but there's no guarantee. So again, not trying to make any disparaging comments against the company, just against my individual experience and the process with which it was handled. And mostly I'm just trying to get shit off my chest because I've been holding this in for almost 2 years. My back is hurting now. My shoulders. Doesn't help that I've been sitting really shittily, but I didn't bring my pillow, my lumbar support pillow over here. But anyways, after that, after I was in the car, after I was done crying, I was finally able to call my cousin. I called my therapist too and let her know, and I called my cousin and told her I needed to see her, my cousin Alicia. And she was there for me. In fact, there have been many times that she's been there for me, and I'm so grateful. I mean, a lot of people have been, but she's been kind of my go-to for these worst days like this, for a lot of my depression shit. Because I know she knows what it's like, because she has depression too. And if I had driven myself there that day, and Calvin hadn't been able to, come pick me up, I knew what I was going to do. I would have probably just signed the paperwork. Maybe. Rather, I shouldn't say I know what I would have done, because it's all still maybe, because maybe I would have changed my mind, or maybe I would have come up with a different solution, or maybe I would have been patient enough to wait for him to get there on the bus, or if somebody was going to go pick him up or something. Like, I probably would have waited. But maybe. But all I could think about was going over to a lookout spot where you can go and look at the Spokane River. And yeah, there's a fence, but it would have been easy to get over the fence. And if you've never seen the Spokane River, where I was standing was near like a water power plant, and so there was like a dam, so all of the current was really strong at that point. So I definitely would have, where I was at, would have been dragged under and probably, if not killed, severely battered and hurt and injured. And it probably would have been a lot worse for me than, what my recovery has been without those physical injuries, if I survived at all. And I probably should have been checked into a psychiatric hospital, but I was worried that my former employer would think that I was being overdramatic, because even though my manager believed me, I don't really think that the director did, because she didn't know me as well, and honestly, I don't think she liked me at all. Like, even before I got fired or thought I might be, like, she treated me like it was just me being immature, and not that I was, like, struggling with a real mental illness that was, like, yeah, I can choose to control my emotions, but at that time I didn't have the tools to do that. I didn't know how to do that. And that has taken over a year of work and intense therapy, including PTSD focused treatment therapy, which thankfully has helped with my BPD, which really leads me to believe that most of my BPD, even though it's hereditary, it's still, mine was very obviously activated, I guess, by my environment. But, I don't know. I just don't think she liked me, and I don't think she gave a fuck. And, you know, she worked from the Seattle office. We were in Spokane. Sorry, my eye's twitching again. She worked from the Seattle office, so she didn't really see me very often. But, yeah. That was one of the worst days. I should probably write that down in my EMDR trigger tracker log so we can process that day and desensitize my body to it. But it feels like such an important part of who I am. Who I am now. And I forget to think about it sometimes. But I'm so grateful for my choice to keep going. Because even though life is really hard, and shit happens every day, and I still some days struggle to get out of bed just because I'm so tired. You know, it's like I survived it. And it's hard because it's something that I'm proud of. And honestly, I'd really like to write about it in like a cover letter of like, honestly, if I can overcome this day, I can overcome anything. But it's just not appropriate usually. People want to know how you can survive in the workplace. But the thing is that I'm smart, and that I know how to do a lot of different things, and I learn really quickly, and part of that's because of ADHD. And part of that's because I'm just a very curious person in general. And I love learning new things. Like, it excites me to learn new things. Even if it's boring, you know, even learning the basics about something is exciting for me, but, you know, it doesn't matter that I overcame this because in the work, and that's one of the hardest parts about me thinking about returning to the workplace now is like the thing I'm most proud of, the thing I've accomplished that I'm most proud of in my life is not suitable for the workplace. And that's what I really want to change. You know, in being an advocate, is I want people to know that this strength exists within me, but it comes with a cost. Like any great superpower. I know a lot of people with mental illnesses don't like to call their illness a power because of how painful and destructive it can be. But I think that's ultimately what, like Superman, for example. Superman has, like, such incredible strength that if he's able to, like, stop a speeding train, imagine the amount of strength and also the amount of self-control and physical control that he has to not break Lois's hand when he's holding her. Have you ever, like, it reminds me of, like, when I was living with my mom, we had this grape arbor in the back, and we had to harvest it in, like, the winter, because that was when the grapes were coldest, like, had the most sweetness, is what I was told. And we didn't have, like, really thin, warm gloves. I had to use, like, working gloves, like yard gloves, really big, thick, fat finger type looking gloves, like a mechanic would wear or something. And I couldn't feel the grapes through them because they were very thick and they didn't really fit my hand correctly. And so I would squish the grapes if I wasn't careful. And that's got to be what it's like to hold Superman's hand as Lois Lane, is like he's wearing these big, thick gloves and he has to just guess how hard to hold on to her hand. And that probably is, like, takes a lot of, like, restricted body movement. You have to hold back this immense, intense, terrifying strength. Or anybody who's watched read the Twilight series or watched the Twilight movies, like, when Edward and Bella had sex and he tore the bedroom up and all of the feathers are everywhere and the headboard's broken and everything's smashed, but she's okay. That's because he was, first of all, probably because he was taking it out on everything around him. Second of all, because he knew how to hold that back and control it. But people with mental illness who don't have those tools, who haven't learned it, are more like a baby skunk or a baby snake. So I don't know if you know this, but snakes actually can control how much venom they let out. But a baby snake doesn't know. It's actually more dangerous to get bit by a baby poisonous snake because they don't know how much to release yet. They're still learning, and they'll learn that more and more as they hunt prey. So if you get bit by a baby snake who's, like, really small but extremely poisonous snake, it's more likely that you'll die because they don't know how to restrict how much they're pumping out. And so, you know, it's like anybody who has a mental illness but doesn't feel like it harnesses some sort of power, you don't have the tools yet. You are Superman before he learns to control himself. You're a baby snake who hasn't learned how much venom to pump out yet. And it's not your fault, but you do have to take, it's not your fault that you have this mental illness. It's not maybe you didn't choose to be sick. Maybe you didn't choose to have whatever disorder that you have. But unfortunately, you are burdened with the responsibility of how you will move forward in life with that illness. And you, at some point, have to make the decision to get the help you need. And if the first time you get help doesn't work, you have to keep going. You have to. I mean, technically you don't have to, actually. You can continue to live your life being sick. Some people also just don't have the resources, but they exist. And a lot of the resources, especially for people who are poor and or living in poverty or well below poverty or are in an abusive relationship, I know that there are barriers, but you are the only one who can decide that it's time to figure out how to make sure you know how to handle this issue. You're the only one who can decide to look for those tools. And I'm not gonna lie. I just got approved for the disability claim I filed last year, 2 years ago. And there were so many times I wanted to give up. But I couldn't, because, you know, it's part of my recovery to not give up. And it's so hard to tell people who are struggling, you know, don't give up, because, and I've lived it. I know that feeling. I know that day that I wanted to just die. Like, if I had been suicidal before. That's not the issue. I had thought about jumping off the building, the 11th floor at Amazon multiple times. I had thought about it many times. And oddly enough, the 11th floor was less terrifying to me to jump off of than, like, the 27th floor. Like, if I had been in a building with that many floors, I think I probably would have been more hesitant about the idea. But, like, I think the 11th floor was just high enough that I didn't think I would actually die, but I'd be hurting. For Amazon, suicide was a point, because I couldn't get help there. It was a cry for attention. It was, you need to take me seriously because you don't seem to think this is a serious issue. That was my goal for that. I will be honest with you. The first time as an adult I felt suicidal, I looked it up, and it's called catatonia. Basically, I just felt kind of like locked-in syndrome happened to me when I would have those. I don't know if it was panic attacks or what it was, but it was like a suicidal, depressive, emotional overwhelm situation. To the point that I couldn't talk, and I had basically just to sit down wherever I was standing, if I was standing. Or if I was already sitting, I would have to lay down. Actually, no, I don't even think I could lay down. I had to sit straight up like this. I couldn't. Anyways, but that day in the car after they fired me was totally different. It was literally my rock bottom. It was, you know, exactly as I said, I was begging for help, begging for somebody to just end it, begging for it to just be over, and really just begging to not have to continue living in that pain. And calling my cousin was one of the steps for me choosing to stay alive and to get help. Calling my therapist and letting her know, even though she was out of town on vacation, you know, that was me making the choice to stay alive and to get help and to go through recovery. Going to therapy, no matter how I felt, there were times I would go into therapy that I felt completely hollow. It wasn't apathetic necessarily. It was just hollow. I didn't have anything. I didn't have any emotion to even feel apathetic. I just didn't feel anything. It was just hollowness. And I still went to therapy, even though I really fucking didn't want to. There was one day I told my therapist, I was like, today I really didn't want to come today. And that was probably one of the only days I felt like that, because my therapist is awesome, and she's really helped me grow emotionally, and not mature, because this isn't an immaturity thing, and again, fuck you. I can't remember her name right now. Okay, I remember her name. I'm not going to say it, but fuck you, director lady, for calling me immature and acting like this bullshit was something that I could just grow out of on my own. That it was like some choice I was making. Yes, I was making a choice, but she knew I was going to therapy because I reported it to my fucking manager every time I went into her, and I told her when I got a new therapist. I told her how I felt like that therapist was really helping. I told her how I felt like I was improving but still struggling. I was very honest, as much as I could be, like I said. Honestly, it just baffles me that they were so surprised by this shit, because it just shows me that they didn't do any research. Like, they cared enough to know, but they didn't care enough to learn. And I'm running out of time. I've got 20 seconds left. So that is the story of the worst day of my life. I wouldn't recommend it, but I also don't recommend letting your story end there. So friends, I hope that you stick around, and I hope that you can get the resources and help you need to recover. Good luck. I love you.